Leadership Forum. This is the Carbon Leadership Forum Nebraska Hub meeting. This is our December meeting. This is summing up our 2023 embodied carbon 201 series. And so in January, we did what is net zero versus what is carbon neutral. After that, we, in another month, studied embodied carbon plans, specifically in relation to the SE 2015 MEP 2040 challenges. In another session, we talked about different life cycle analysis tools. Specifically, Building Transparency gave us a demo of the EC3 tool. And then earlier this year, we also did the Concrete Summit. The National Ready Mix Association sent us a speaker to talk about the state of concrete, specifically in regards to environmental product declarations. So those are the 201 series, and this is our final one. This is the decarbonization in construction. Just a quick recap about the Carbon Leadership Forum Nebraska Hub as a result of what we've done this year. We've done our 201 series, which concludes today. We have done a couple of 101, which is what is embodied carbon. We presented once to the National Society of Health Engineers, and we presented once at the University of Nebraska under Vish Reddy. We also have launched a newsletter where we're trying to get more specific about what's happening with embodied carbon in Nebraska, basically. So if you would like access to that newsletter, if you'd like an email, let myself or Stuart Shell know, and we'll get you connected with that. Speaking of which, we also have a YouTube channel, so if you'd like to see any of our Embodied Carbon 201 series presentations, I printed a QR code. So if you're in the room, you can grab that, and this just takes you to our channel. It's also super easy to get to our channel because you can just go to YouTube and say CLF-NE for CLF Nebraska. So I have this available. I'll show it again later for those of you who are on the call, not in person. So finally, we have also made some great partnerships with our working group and with our other presentations, and those partnerships are with, again, the Nebraska Society of Health Engineers, UNMC in the form of request for support, presenting at UNL, beginning a conversation with the city of Lincoln as we discuss embodied carbon policy as a working group. We have been hosted or been provided lunch by Enterprise, the National Ready Mix Concrete Association, Hawkins Construction, Branch Pattern, BBH, DLR Group, Leo A. Daly, and Schnackle have all provided support in various ways, either hosting or providing lunches. Specifically, Leo A. Daly and Branch Pattern, thank you for hosting us. And then today we are at MCL, who are not only providing lunch and not only providing a place to host, but we have Rich Woodson. And to talk more about Rich Woodson, he graduated in 2000 with a bachelor's degree in architectural engineering from Kansas State University. He worked as a consulting engineer for 22 years as a registered professional engineer. At the end of his consulting engineer career, he was registered in 25 states. Rich now works for a general contractor / construction manager, leading their sustainability efforts as well as providing MEP quality control for every project that MCL builds. Rich is a member of ASHRAE, ASHE, NSHE, and a board member for the Nebraska Recycling Council. Rich also volunteers as a committee member for a local nonprofit focused on raising money for families with kids who have been diagnosed with cancer. Also presenting today, we have Ben Ruthven. Did I pronounce that correctly? Ben graduated from Marquette University in 2011 with a degree in civil engineering. He worked as a superintendent for a heavy civil contractor in Wisconsin prior to joining Peitzmeier Demolition. Ben stayed at Peitzmeier's Earthwork and Grading Division. Ben started Peitzmeier Earthwork and Grading Division in 2015. In 2019, Ben coordinated the acquisition and reformation of their affiliated C&D landfill, Rainwood Refuse LLC. In 2022, Ben, along with his business partner, completed a buyout of Peitzmeier Demolition, where he now serves as president. He's a volunteer firefighter / EMT for Calhoun Fire and Rescue Department, and serves as the heavy equipment and rigging specialist for Nebraska Task Force 1, the FEMA Urban Search and Rescue Team based out of Lincoln. So everybody, if you please give a hand for our presenters today and take it over.
Thank you for coming. I wanted to just do some housekeeping items. Out the door to the column to the left are the bathrooms. Just to make those that are just online a little jealous, I will sit and have a beer with you if you want after this presentation. We do have them in our lounge here. Again, thank you for coming. I wanted to partner with Ben on this. Ben is maybe one of the most passionate guys I've ever talked with regarding recycling and reuse. And you're going to hear that when I probably have to force myself into some of this, and he just does it naturally. And I might have to take the mic away from him just to get him to stop talking about it.
For both, just let me know.
So let's get into this. Here's our agenda. We want to talk about why does it matter to be sustainable in our construction efforts, understanding our impact, what happens when construction waste leaves the job site, and then talking about construction sustainability. So why does it matter? Well, in 2018, there was 600 million tons of construction and demolition waste in the U.S. The average construction worker creates 82 times more waste each year than the average American. 40% of the Earth's raw materials are consumed by the construction industry. And we contribute 23% of the global methane emissions. By 2035, 75% of the floor space in the US will be new or renovated. This is a graph probably many of you have seen. Where we work today, the built environment generates nearly 50% of the annual global CO2 emissions. So is there a way I can get rid of that top bar? Anybody know?
Do you have the mouse?
Yeah.
Just need to open the chat.
Oops, sorry.
It's okay if we can't.
They'll just click on the chat. Let's close that.
Oh, okay.
Learn something.
Tim, I assume you're monitoring the chat. So we need to understand our impact and where we can make the most changes in our industry. And here's really the life cycle of the construction industry. And so where do we have opportunities to make a change? Well, for MCL, we have an opportunity in the transportation to the site in some aspects, and then the construction of the building. And then in Ben's world, he has, he can make changes to the demolition of a building, the way they haul the materials away, and then the decision to landfill or to recycle those materials. So I'll turn it over to Ben now on what happens when our construction waste leaves the job site.
Alrighty, so we're gonna go kind of over the whole life cycle of your building once you turn it over to us and we get rid of it. So traditionally, let's say 1990 and prior, if you wrecked a building, pushed in a hole, loaded it all in the truck and went out to the landfill. Since the 90s, it started to kind of progress into more and more recycling. When you think of demolition contractor, I'm guessing you're not thinking the greenest guy in the world, right? People don't have that impression of us. We are probably the best recyclers on a job site. We probably have the greatest impact on reusing materials, recycling materials of any trade out there. I'd argue that every day of the week. We're contractors are sometimes talking in pounds of material they recycle. We're talking in thousands and thousands of tons of material. So we've really made a great evolution over the last 30, 35 years into being a very, very green industry. Go next slide real quick. So we're gonna go through the process. We at Peitzmeier kind of have two different types of demolition we focus on. We call it white boxing, which would be, let's say in 20 years, MCL decides they're too big for this office and they're gonna move out. Somebody purchases the space and they want to put condos in. We would come in, clear everything that's non-structural out and give a clean slate to build back apartment buildings or something like that. The other one we do is full structural demo where building goes to the ground, you're left with a clean green field. So either way, the first step's the same for us. We go into a structure and we clear all non-structural elements out. So ceiling grid, carpet, walls, all that stuff. We want to be left with nothing but concrete and steel, stuff that we can recycle. So right now at Peitzmeier, we currently recycle steel. So that'd be your steel studs, any piping in the building, rebar, structural steel, all that stuff. We recycle copper pipe, any electrical wiring, comm wiring, any other non-ferrous metals like your storefront materials, sometimes you run into some aluminum materials, and concrete. That's all stuff we currently recycle. Now, there are a lot more items that we can recycle. I'll get into it a little later, but the markets just don't allow us to right now. It's just not economically feasible. But you can recycle drywall, you can recycle ceiling pads, wood studs, glass, asphalt shingles, plastic piping. Right now, roofing membrane, furniture, and most floor material are items that nobody's found a good way to recycle. So those are going to the landfill regardless. All right, so step two, we've white boxed the structure. We're down to structural elements. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tear the structure down. So That's a great picture up there showing what these buildings typically look like before we wreck them. This was a cast in place concrete structure on Creighton's campus. It was, I can't remember the name of the hall, Becker Hall. As you can see, all we have left is concrete in there. It looks like there's a little bit of debris on the outside, but that whole pile right there is concrete and rebar. Things that we're recycling on these are the walls, the columns, footings, floors, any masonry. So if you have partition walls in there that are CMU, exterior cladding that may have been brick or masonry, that all can get recycled. Structural steel, so your I-beams, roof decking, cladding, any floor decking that was underneath the concrete, all stuff we can recycle. If you look at that picture, that's our high reach excavator, and it's got a processor on the end of it. It looks like a big scissors. We can fit different jaws on there to process different types of materials. So we have a steel shear for cutting iron apart. We have a what's called a pulverizer. It'll take concrete and it'll debond the rebar. So you can pull all your rebar out and you're left with nothing but concrete debris. Then we have a concrete shear for doing really big concrete members that'll just snap them right too. We have that on our big excavator right there, but we also have a fleet that fits all our different sizes. So when we're tearing a building down, yeah, we have our primary machine tearing it down, but we'll have 3 or 4 excavators chasing it, that they're processing everything. Tearing the building down is the easiest part of the whole job. The long duration times are processing the stuff up into usable products. So we might have that building down in 4 days, but we're gonna sit there for 6 weeks processing and getting the stuff ready for market. Go to the next slide then. Okay, so step 3 is getting rid of all this stuff. And there's a lot of different avenues we can go down. If we're gonna look at metals first, we typically take our metals straight from the job site to the recycler. Alders in town, they're probably the biggest name in town. They're actually in Council Bluffs. Steel gets loaded on site on trailers, hauled to their facility. They shred it and then they export it. A lot of it goes overseas right now, but some goes to the domestic steel mills. And you can see that's a pretty good picture of it, how we like to separate our jobs. So you have a really nice pile of iron right in the middle. Insulation's been separated from and put over to the side. And I can't see this picture, but there's a concrete pile over to the right on this project. Non-ferrous metals, we can go a little further with those. So if you're ripping this building apart, you're just gonna lop everything apart and you're gonna have pipe of various lengths with various conditions. We take all the material back to our yard. We're cutting it down, so we're moving fittings. You're separating brass from your copper. Wire will strip, get all that off of there. So it's just a pure product that we can send to the recycler then at that point. We found that makes it more economically viable to go through these buildings and capture that material if we process it further. Next slide then. Okay, so concrete and masonry pulp. This is kind of our big focus because it's relatively easy to do. There's a good end market for it, and we create a boatload of it. So we just finished crushing for 2023 about 2 weeks ago, and we crushed somewhere between 50 and 55,000 tons of material off. That was all from our product or our products. No outside products were contributing to that. So that's, we'll have some video later. You can see what that pile looks like, but that is a significant amount of material. So we can process asphalt, brick, concrete, CMU, all that stuff. So it'll come in, it may come in separated, hopefully. Sometimes it comes in mixed together. We place it at our landfill. We have several different piles that we're utilizing. So we'll have a clean pile, an oversized, a dirty pile, asphalt, brick. And then we're going to go through and process that further. So if it comes in dirty, we need to run that material across the scalping screen. So we're going to recycle everything off of that. So when we say scalping, we're going to remove all the dirt fines from that. That dirt gets reused on projects around town. So we put that on our fill pile. Now it's getting used as structural fill. And it's actually a really good product for that because it sometimes has some rock in it that really helps it support a little better. Concrete goes across the screen. It can go on the clean pile, or if it's still bulky structural concrete, we'll send it to a secondary processing pile where we will use additional pulverizers, pull all that rebar out, and now we have another product we can sell as ferrous iron and concrete. So we build these piles up all year. Come September, we bring in a customized crusher. They're just a subcontractor. They come in, crush our whole pile off. We can make different gradations. This is something I know you guys are a lot of architects here. I think you can request using these products on your jobs. One disservice the city of Omaha did the industry was in 2022, they came up with the city of Omaha spec, that standard spec does not allow the use of recycled concrete aggregates on their projects. I don't know how much you guys get to defining your specs, but a lot of times you guys adopt the city of Omaha spec for the project. Now we're building a building out in that field over there. We can't use recycled concrete on that except for temporary surfacing. So that's one change that could happen that could really help utilize these materials a little more. So in addition, during the crusting process, we also run a crossbelt magnet, which will show that pulls that last little bit of steel there. So at 3 different points in the concrete's life cycle on demolition, we're pulling more and more iron out of this thing. The goal is to get down so you have no iron left in there and you can recycle all of that. Another thing we recycle is trees. So for us personally, up until we purchased that landfill, if we had a land clearing job, we'd either burn it, which is not great for the environment, or we'd haul it to landfill, which takes up a ton of airspace. It's just not an efficient use. Once we got the landfill, we started creating a stockpile like we did with the aggregate or the concrete. We build it up over the year, and we bring in a grinder once a year, grind all that material off. And it's a coarse mulch. It's not what you would see for landscaping. You can further process that. We just don't do that. A couple of uses for it though. Nurseries use it for their nursery stock. They'll put it along the trees to keep them damp. One thing I'm very interested in, but we haven't worked out the details yet, would be biomass. So you can take this stuff, and if you can find a user for it, somebody that's using a biomass boiler, and nobody real local to us does that yet, you can heat your facility for the whole year on the amount of mulch that we're creating. So kind of a cool use, hasn't quite developed yet. So lastly, we've gone through all the stuff we can possibly recycle. Last step is stuff that we have to put in our C&D landfill cell. So that's actually the smallest part of our operation. The smallest fraction of material goes into the landfill for us, which we strive to get 75% diversion rate. That's pretty good. It's not the best in the world. It's pretty good for the United States. So material shows up at our landfill. We've decided this is mostly trash. This isn't stuff we can recycle. We dump the material at the landfill face, and then we go through one final sort, or we pick through it with an excavator and find any last recyclables we can pick out of that, or anything that doesn't conform to our waste stream. A C&D landfill is different than your typical MSW landfill like Pheasant Point. So there's certain materials we have to be careful to pick out, paints, tires, stuff like that. That has to go out to Pheasant Point. So we do one final separate, and then push it in the landfill cell and cover it. Just some real rough math. So we said we did 50 to 55,000 tons of aggregate last year. We only did about 2,500 ton of trash last year. So I think we do a pretty good job of separating that stuff. And you'll see that industry-wide demolition because it just makes good economic sense for a lot of stuff. Next slide. So how can we be better? The main driving factor is end users, right? There's a lot of product like we showed on that middle section of that earlier slide that we have no end user for the products. There's not much we can do. Drywall and ceiling tiles would be a fairly easy one to recycle. You can field apply it, but you have to find a farmer that's willing to do that. You can grind it up and it's used as soil modification. That's going to be a fairly easy one. Asphalt shingles, another one that'd be fairly easy, but there's just not the need there yet. You can repurpose that into asphalt pavement in some scenarios. They don't locally. And one of the problems is land is not that hard to come by around here, right? So landfilling is pretty easy, pretty economical. You get on the East Coast and the West Coast, land's at a premium. We're seeing $22 a ton for disposal around here at the public landfills. Out there, they're paying $80 to $120 a ton for disposal. So they have a lot bigger driving factor for doing the recycling. The next step would be, if we can find these end users, is you can install what they call a sort line at your facility, where it can be very rudimentary, it can be very complex. The rudimentary version is a conveyor belt going along very slowly, and you have a labor force of 5 guys up there visually picking different materials out and separating them by type. So glass, wood, concrete. So you're left with nothing but stuff that can only be landfilled at the end of your conveyor belt. Now, the company I'm referencing up there, Eberhard in Switzerland, they're like the pinnacle of this stuff. They've been doing it pretty hardcore since the 80s, and they have I believe, 87% diversion rate, which is just outstanding. They have a fully digital pick line. There's one human involved in the whole process, and he loads the material into it. All their waste comes to this facility. And then they have robotic optical sorters that separate everything. And it is amazing to watch this thing work. The other thing they've pioneered that's really cool is utilizing RCA, recycled concrete aggregate, in concrete again. So it gets a second life cycle as actual structural concrete. If we don't have the driving force to do that here, but if we did, that'd be a great use for this aggregate. If somebody could figure that out locally, it would be awesome, because you just have a market for this material that would make people want to recycle more and more, instead of putting it in the landfill. Or, I mean, people are dumping concrete in holes on farms to get rid of it. Sometimes it's a little silly to me, but they don't have the means to do the recycling. That's not here. So how does this reduce our carbon footprint? So if you know anything about the mining process, we have a lot of mines locally. We have the Fort Calhoun Quarry, there's Weeping Water, there's sand pits out in Waterloo. They are extremely carbon heavy operations. The haul trucks, the crushing operations, the amount of electricity they're consuming to do this stuff is extremely carbon heavy. By supplementing these aggregates with recycled concrete aggregate, we can really, really reduce that down. The amount of carbon we're emitting to create this new aggregate is very minimal. We're talking one crush and spread and loader to fill it, versus Calhoun runs 12 haul trucks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's just the haul trucks. That's not the loading, all the other stuff they have associated with it. And then the other one is with the steel. So Ore mining is just as significant a carbon, or if not greater, contributor to carbon out there as mining aggregates. And a lot of it has to do with international shipping too. So we don't get all our material domestically. A lot of it comes from overseas. So you have the shipping associated with that that's contributing to that. So any of the recycling we can do, even if it's just concrete and steel, are going to have a huge, huge impact on the carbon footprint of the construction industry. So I know I talk extremely fast.
You told me you were gonna talk slow.
Sometimes I get ahead of myself. I'll give a question section later, but does anybody have any questions on that stuff right now?
You say, you said that we're not recycling concrete
No, well, some people don't.
locally?
There's a lot of contractors do. Most of the demolition guys do. Some of the grading guys do. But same token, you go north, west, south, where it gets more rural, they don't have the facilities to do this stuff. So they're finding a farmer with a hole in his field. And it's legal to do. Dump it in there and push dirt across, and now he's got a flat field. But not necessarily the best thing to be doing, I don't think so.
What percentage of new steel bought or produced in America is recycled?
That's a good question. I don't know that for certain. I think a lot of it comes from overseas.
Really?
At least the raw material. I don't know if you know anything more about that, but I think a lot of raw material comes from overseas.
I think most domestic steel has, 75, upwards of 90 recycled content in there, so I assume.
And steel's probably not the biggest one. It's there's a lot of copper is produced in the United States, but there's a lot of it produced in South America. So we're getting stuff from there. Lithium ion batteries, all that stuff's coming from mostly China, I think, right now, in Russia.
So how are you using the recycled concrete?
So temporary roads. So we have there's two main uses for us. Temporary roads on project sites. So you got your crane roads or what they're using to get in and out of the project. We can use it there. And we can sometimes abandon that in place then below the subgrade of pavement if that's allowed by the engineer. The other one would be soil stabilization. So say you're grading a job and you get just soft muck at the bottom. A lot of times the engineer will specify, okay, put down a foot of 3-inch clean rock. And you can inquire, hey, can we use recycled aggregate instead of virgin limestone for this? And your cost difference just on purchasing, I'm not talking trucking, and most of these things have to be trucked from a further distance than the local crushers. Limestone right now is running about 28 bucks a ton for 3-inch. I'm selling 3-inch internally to myself for 10 bucks a ton. So pretty significant difference. And this could get spread project wide if they allow the use of it. I mean, there's huge, huge, huge savings there.
So there's a question, Kenny, online.
Sure.
Asks, how does extensive recycling on demo project impact the cost of the project versus taking everything?
Cheapens it.
Makes it
And I mean, I'd love to say that the only reason I'm doing this is because I want to be very green, but there's got to be an economic driver there, right? Otherwise, my competition is just going to push this building over, haul it to landfill. But I mean, when you recycle steel, you can turn it into the scrap recycler and get money back from that. So it makes sense to do that. We can cover our cost of doing that processing by the money we're receiving back from the recycler we're turning it into. Same with concrete. So we're selling that for 10 bucks a ton or so. That washes with the extra effort we've had to do to separate this. But if you look, say I'm paying my crusher around 8 bucks a ton to do the crushing. But if I haul that material to a landfill, now I'm paying 22 bucks a ton to dispose of it. So it's money-wise, it's a no-brainer for us.
There's a question about carbon recycling. Is there, where do you find it more locally to do that?
And there might be a habitat restore scenario, but I mean, the volumes we're talking are hundreds of thousands of square feet versus taking this room up and recycling it. You can maybe do that, but on the scale that we're pulling carpet up on stuff, it's just, there's no end user for it. So that all gets landfilled right now.
So your biggest expense comes from sorting, right?
And
That's where
trucking
you-
is actually the biggest expense
Okay.
on these projects, but our biggest on-site expense would be the sorting.
So do you feel like there's some building systems that are more painful than others to do your work, or is it all kind of the same?
The worst ones, and there's not much new construction to be able to do about it, are the old type 3 buildings where it's masonry walls with wood on the interior because it's all mixed together and there's not a good way to cut that wood out first because it's structural. My favorite building to tear down are cast in place concrete because they're super rigid. You can throw equipment all in place and cut them down, and then all you're left with is concrete and steel. But pretty much any modern structure is fairly easy to segregate all this stuff.
You mentioned that the Omaha building code doesn't allow the concrete.
Used to recycle concrete
Yeah,
aggregate.
what's the hesitancy there?
So I don't know a whole lot about it. What I had heard was it was a LA abrasion factor, so like the way it wears down. over time, and alkalinity they had problems with.
So I mean, are there other municipalities that are allowing that?
Yeah, yeah. Lincoln. It's the engineer wrote, sorry, I get a little aggravated with this because it seems very silly.
Yeah.
But the engineer involved with that told the city, you can't use RCA anymore. And Omaha used RCA up until 2020. It was allowed in the spec. There was a big argument, and this was before we were really doing a lot of crushing, but like Conrico's a big crusher in town. They got together with a couple of the other crushers and created a report showing the economic impact, and it was staggering how much money it's gonna cost the local economy to not allow the use of this stuff. And I don't know if it just, that wasn't a strong enough voice for them to allow it still. And it could change in the next round of specs too, but right now, that's not something they're allowing.
Is it mainly aggregate base or is it also concrete?
So right now, locally, nobody uses recycled concrete aggregate in concrete. That's the thing that Everhard has kind of going over in Switzerland. They found a way to do it, but you can't use it in road base. You can't use it in pipe bedding per the spec. We still get rid of ours every year for temp roads, just because all the construction we're involved in, we can get rid of all our volume. But it'd be a lot easier if there was a better market for it.
Sounds like it would be easier to actually specify concrete, recycled aggregate in the mixed design.
And now with putting recycled concrete in the mix, there's some issues there, and a lot of it has to do with the porosity of the material. There's a lot of stuff that's over my head on why, but it has to do with the mix design and how it's going to perform within that mix that I think is causing the problems.
I think they're doing research in Kearney on that.
I've heard there's some people looking at it.
We did have a concrete summit earlier this year. It was in August, right? And so this is something that is being pursued locally. I'm not going to name names, but there's universities partnering with some local concrete industry people to make stuff like that happen. But it's like you said, it's one of the issues that they're highlighting is just the unpredictability of what they're getting as far as this recycled aggregate goes. So finding a way to make it consistently, whatever grade you would call it. But there's some promising results as a result of it. And another part of it is the injection of carbon that has been bubbled from somewhere else that can actually be injected as part of this process. So there are studies and there are things being done to make that happen, but at this point,
If they need some raw feedstock, they can call me. I got plenty.
We got this video here.
Yeah. So this is before we start real quick. This is a video of our crusher spread in operations because it shows some other parts of the landfill that we're working on. I may hop up and point some stuff out while we're running here, but. So what they're doing right now, that's the primary crusher. That's a change there. That's a cross-all negative. That's why I asked about how. That's no different second. We don't need it for wrap. We actually found it. People love buying asphalt because it makes a great parking lot base if you're doing a temporary parking lot, because it really, when the sun gets hot, you hit it with a roller, basically turns into asphalt again. But like oh, it's great. I love that stuff. But Omni, our big asphalt contractor in town, when they'll reincorporate that into their mix design. I can't remember what the spec is, but there's a certain percent of wrap you can put back into a new mix.
So I pause. You can point out your.
A couple other things going on here. So right here is our non-ferrous processing shed. So all our wire and everything goes in there, and we got 3 guys that's their full-time job, is just processing non-ferrous metals and making them resaleable. Back here, you can't see it great, but that's a mulch pile. I mean, we did 22,000 yards of mulch this year. All that stuff is now being hauled off to various end users. And then you see the dirt. Not that you recycle dirt, but we actually do reuse dirt. So when you have a big export job, It comes to our landfill, we store it, we're like a big bank for dirt. And then when there's a fill job, it goes out from there and we can use it as fill. So, not that you ever really waste. And that's a permitting issue. The way we're permitted with the NE right now is we are not allowed to take any outside vendors. As long as we're the hauler, we can do it. So you could contract me to haul your debris for you. But I can't, the Conrico's open to the public for their concrete. I couldn't say I'm open to the public for trash. That's pretty standard of C&D landfills in Nebraska. The MSFWs will take everybody, but Abe's Trash, if you're familiar with that, they're in our C&D landfill up in Washington County. Same deal, they're private, they can only take their own containers.
Another question on mine, how can engineers best facilitate recycling on our projects without forcing your hand to add cost to the project?
Talk,
Like to start seeing our specifications.
talk to your demolition contractors about ideas you have. I trust me, I don't know about my competition, but I would love to talk to people about what we can do to make these things more efficient. And sometimes we get specs that are like, guys, this is not impacting like you think it is. This is gonna create one job. They want to salvage all the ceiling tiles on the project. The amount of trucking we had to do that because we couldn't ball it all up and smash it into a box probably negated anything they were trying to do to save it. Stuff like that. We have great ideas. I mean, I don't want tomorrow, but we have pretty good ideas. We were around this stuff so much that we can come up with ideas like, hey, we did this. Another great one would be, okay, allow crushing on your site. If you have a huge concrete building you're tearing down, let's crush that stuff on site and reuse it on site as aggregate somewhere. Now we're saving, think of all the trucking we're saving. We said we had 55,000 tons of material in our landfill. All that had to get trucked there. A side dump will carry about 20 tons. Think about how many truckloads of material that's coming out there. I mean, we run, I would guess on average 30 truckloads of material in there a day, and that might be on the low side. So if we keep some of that stuff on site and reuse it, it's gonna benefit the project because you're saving on trucking, you're getting your material way cheaper for your temporary roads, or if you get this incorporated permanently. But in my mind, that's always a no-brainer. It's been a very tough sell though, to owners.
One comment on your point, which I like about talking to demo contractors, usually there's a middleman or two in there. So, you know, as an engineer, oftentimes you aren't getting to talk to the demo contractor. So you might have to insist to set up.
And I don't even need to be on the job. I'm serious. If you guys ever want to ask a question about demolition or recycling or anything like that, give me a jingle. We're glad to lend an ear because it's just gonna make everything better out here.
And that's where a partnership as a CMR, we can get our demo contractor involved early. We can work with the project team to talk about our diversion goals. We can put cost associated to those diversion goals. Those are some things I'm going to talk about here as in construction sustainability. So any more questions on?
Yeah, sorry, I was
Oh,
tired.
you're fine. You left me 15 minutes.
Insulated metal panel.
So the way we do it now is we just haul it straight to the recycler. I'm not entirely sure what they would do with it. I'm guessing within their shredding process, they have it's a blower that blows all the lights up and puts it in a dumpster. I'm assuming the insulation gets landfilled at that point.
But they can use the skin.
Yeah, oh yeah, yep. And if we have walls that have insulation on, we'll try and usually break that off first and haul that into the landfill. And we try and, I hate insulation, it's the bane of my existence. But we don't need to insulate any more buildings.
Some wheels that.
Yeah, it's interlocking wood, and just tear the stuff apart. You can feed, I mean, they're impressive. You can feed whole cars in there and they'll tear it up, and then they have just like the screen plants, it has various separating mechanisms to pull non-ferrous, ferrous metals out, trash.
If you get precast, like a sandwich panel precast, you have.
Yes, and if it has insulation in it, it ruins my name.
You just give up.
We've tried a million different methods. Sometimes we try processing, chasing all the insulation down, and that's a pain. Depending on the volume, we might just end up landfilling that because it's just not worth the effort. But it's also a pain to get rid of because it's this giant panel that you have to somehow crush up in your landfill.
Make any difference if it's metal ties or carbon ties between the lights.
It's the insulation is what kills us. If we have metal in something, we don't care. It's great. The crossbelt, they can pull that out of there. It's trashy stuff that really ruins our day.
I think we could revisit this stuff once
We're going to remove the insulation from your house first, and then we can deal with your wife. So let's talk construction sustainability. So when MCL was talking to me about coming over to the dark side, They said, we want you to perform MVP quality control across our projects. And they said, we also want you to lead our sustainability efforts, mostly through some conversations that they were having with Sarah. And so I turned to our leadership here and I said, listen, I know what sustainability means in the consulting industry. I don't know what it means in the construction industry. And they said, we don't either, but we're going to do it together. So in July of 2021, MCL became signatory to Building Greens. We became the 19th contractor in the country to become signatory to Building Greens contractors' commitment to sustainable construction. And in that commitment, we look at 5 different areas of focus: carbon reduction, job site wellness, water management, waste management, and material selection. We're required as part of this commitment to apply these principles on a project or projects that would represent 30% of our annual revenue. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into 3 of these areas, which I think has the biggest impact to carbon reduction. But first of all, let's talk about sustainable construction leaders, those who have signed on to the commitment. This is back when it was still about 20. I think it's up to about 25 now, but you can see there are several in our top 20 firms in here. The big boys are looking at this, and MCL wanted to get ahead of the game here. And so, you know, we're amongst a lot of individuals. We actually meet several times a year and talk about best practices, what's working well. My goal end of the day is to put competition aside and try to get other local contractors to sign on to the commitment. And I'm probably going to be more successful in that by convincing owners to put requirements in their specs that would require waste diversion. And we're seeing it already. And so that's where we're headed. But let's talk about carbon reduction. How do we reduce our greenhouse emissions? Number 1, we've implemented a company-wide anti-idling policy. We're going to, what did just happen? We did that. We're also going to try to get our subcontractor partners to play along with us. What we are not going to do is police this. We've got a policy. I don't intend to, what I don't want to have happen is for our project teams, our superintendents, our project managers on site to feel like being sustainable, forcing them to be sustainable makes their job harder. So we're going to do this, and I'm getting good buy-in on a lot of this. We'll find out when it's really, really cold or really, really hot. Also, this is not my language. This is the contractor's commitment language, but we want to request but not require our suppliers and subcontractors to provide EPDs. I think everyone in the room probably knows what EPDs are. I think the reason that they are using this loose of language right now is that many products still don't have EPDs. And as we continue to go forward, you know, and manufacturers are providing these, then we as a project team and a contractor team can use that to make better material selections. The other thing we're required to do is track and try to reduce our scope 1 emissions, which is our fleet. We're paying attention to our fleet and those vehicles which are no longer producing, you know, what we would consider good fuel efficiency. We're replacing over time. We are looking at electrifying, at least in 2024, one truck. We're still debating on how a electric truck works well when a guy's at a job site. Haven't said we're ruling it out, but we're investigating it. We're looking at our scope 2 emissions. That's our utility consumption. I'm working hard right now to become Energy Star certified here. Unfortunately, this building's about 3+ years old, and they ran it for 2.5 years with the rooftop units running 24/7. So they dug me into a hole with energy consumption, and I'm working our way back out of the hole. I've implemented obviously occupancy schedules, and we're getting there. It's just going to take me a while to dig out of the hole they left me. And to be honest, scope 3 corporate travel, we don't do a lot of corporate travel. And just to be honest, I'm not there yet on tracking that. And then we need to report and disclose internally. My goal and our leadership here are not afraid to report externally. So when we see good things, we'll report it. Waste management is probably the area where we can make the biggest impact to the environment. And that's number one, picking a good, enthusiastic demo partner. I told you guys, I warned you. And so, number one, we want to set waste diversion goals. UNMC, Nebraska Medicine are requiring waste diversion goals. There's some other school districts that are approaching it. I think when you start, our goal is to educate them to include those in their requirements. We are going to, our leadership has found so much interest in this and so much, the understanding that it makes such a big difference, and it's not that hard to do. We're finding out is that I've now been told that we're going to do waste diversion on every single project that we can where we have the real estate to do it. It's not really about the cost. It doesn't cost that much, and we're tracking that. If I put a 30 yard out there and I fill it, I got to dump it more times, right? If I put 4 20 yards out there, we're not really seeing an increase in our hauls. So we need to, at least per the contractor's commitment, create at least 2 waste streams to divert from the landfill. It's not hard to get to 4. And then some of the more difficult things is to work with your haulers and your demo contractors to get the weight. Everything that leaves our site, I need a weight on it. The hardest thing to get that is our concrete suppliers, right? So they do their washouts, they have all these excess. I need to know how much that weighed, even if we're estimating a dump load truck, I need to know how much that weighed. He talked about removing trees. I need to know the weight of those trees so that we can take advantage of that as part of our diversion rate. Some of the hardest things to do is just get people to sort it correctly. We typically will use our lowest paid employee on a job site to take it from within the building to outside the building and properly sort it. We are getting better. I find that if I get our superintendent excited about it, and I'm going to show you a case study here. If he's excited about it, he'll get his subs excited about it, and he'll get his entire staff. So I'll call all the rest of the craft on site, his staff. If he's excited about it, everyone else gets pretty excited. And I'm going to show you what we did at a local tenant fit out project. But then we want to disclose, and so we have to determine what our total diversion was and per stream, and I'll show you how we're doing that. Here's some the available divertible waste streams: concrete, we talked about, drywall, wood, cardboard, and metal. Every project team that we have is really good at capturing metal because they reap the rewards, right? I'm soon, don't tell anyone, I'm going to take that away from them, and we're going to take the rewards and spread it across all of our company for because some people get on projects that don't have a lot of metal, right? And then you get these guys that go on a project with a lot of metal, and they're getting all these rewards. There's actually money in cardboard, not right now, not today, but there's a lot of money in cardboard when it is paying. I think it was as much as $140 a ton. We now have accounts with the 2 major cardboard recyclers here in town. I've been told by our haulers, by Abe's, let me pick where you're going to haul it, because depending on where we are compared to those recyclers and depending on how they want it, like First Star Fiber wants it clean, and I can't remember, International Paper doesn't care, right? So it's open dumpster versus a closed dumpster. But again, end of the day, there's money in cardboard, so I can incentivize our entire team by sorting it correctly. And prior to doing some of these projects where we were starting to create the how do we do this efficiently, I would have not thought there was that much cardboard on a site. I was an engineer in an office building doing projects. And once you get on a job site more often, and once I show you some stats from a tenant fit out, it's incredible how much. So we want to disclose. Well, how do we disclose? We want to get our owners excited. So I need something that's flashy. This is a tenant fit out, Fusion Medical up 192nd and Dodge. We really picked that project because we didn't know how well waste diversion would work on a tenant fit out. this is where our superintendent was so excited. He got the entire, all of our subcontractors excited. They were really good at sorting and not contaminating. We had a 65% diversion rate. We hit 68%. And I'm going to zoom into some of this. What the contractor's commitment says is if you have to hit at least 65% or of waste diverted, or you need to hit a total waste on a project of less than 10 pounds per square foot, and we were at 3.3 pounds per square foot. So what we've done on this graph is the pie chart is the waste composition. I'm sorry, it's fuzzy, but you can see where the waste was on our project, and then here you can see the waste streams over the project life. And so what we're analyzing is where do we really need to, when do we really need the appropriate amount of dumpsters there, and so we can estimate it appropriately in pre-construction.
Where'd the 10% number come from?
10 pounds per.
That's the contractor's commitment. But if you look here, we had over 15 tons of cardboard on a tenant fit out. It's 100,000 square foot tenant fit out, but it just floored me. And as we continue to do this, and then, so again, at our company quarterly meeting last quarter, I want to make it relatable, right? So the amount of waste that we diverted from the landfill is equivalent to 16 African elephants or 2 737 airplanes.
Are the African elephants the biggest elephants?
They are.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Now, what we're going to do for so we want to make this relatable to our owners. So if I'm doing a R&L trucking company, I'm going to relate this to semis, right? We're going to make this so that the owners get excited about this. And if we can get people excited, this is where we can make the biggest impact. Material selection is an area where we have very little influence. But if we're CMR and we're working with project teams early, that's when we can try to educate. Now, everyone in this room is really educated about healthy building materials, and then we just need to make decisions on the cost of those healthy building materials and can we afford them. And that's why working together as a CMR, you're saying this, we're trying to influence you, we price it up. We tried to do a project that we're building for a partnership with UNK and Nebraska Medicine out in Kearney. We tried to go mass timber and we couldn't make it pencil out. It was just too expensive. But at least we're talking about it, right? And so that's where we need to start. And then, obviously if there's more people like you that are on the design teams and you understand where this is. And if we can start getting good EPDs where we as a contractor can make good informed decisions on what the right product is for the project and still meets the design intent, that's where we're headed as a contractor. Before we get to questions, one of the things I'm working on now, and I'm really in its infancy, I've been working on it for about 2 days, is I'm going to try to make on a project that we have upcoming, I'm going to try to make our construction trailer net zero. Okay, the reason I'm working on it now is I'm pricing up buying a solar array, all manufactured, prefabbed, or I'm going to build it. But we're going to have a construction project where our construction trailer will be net zero here within 2024. And so that's really exciting to me. My leadership is fully bought into that. And just to be fully honest, not only is it the right thing to do, right? Because everyone's talking net zero 2030 challenges. There's a huge marketing impact to that, right? And we're trying to go get the next job, right? We want to show them our waste diversion and what we're doing in waste diversion. What can we do to be, that particular client is asking us, how can you save money, energy on your construction sites? That's where this started. Like, we got in trouble by Creighton. We did Creighton Werner. And at the end of the day, Creighton's, one of their comments was, why was it so lit up 24 hours a day? Why do you need all those lights on? So now we're investigating ways to, you need some lights on, right, for security. We're investigating ways to just tie in a time clock, right? Let's turn some construction lights off at night. Now, they're all LED, so they're not drawing as much as they used to draw, but we're saving. If we can do that across all of our project sites, we're making a difference. And so those are just really simple solutions to try to save energy on a construction site. So with that said, we're close to out of time. Thanks for all the, any questions?
I just have one, you know, at the start of the talk, you identified kind of the areas of impact that you have during construction. How are you tracking that impact that you have during, you know, your fuel use, your energy use during construction? Are you tracking all of that on projects?
So one of the things that the contractor's commitment wanted when they started was they felt like we as contractors should track our fuel consumption to a project. And all of those at the time, 19, 20 contractors said, it's impossible. I can't do that. So what we've now kind of honed in on is let's, as a construction firm overall, let's analyze our annual fuel consumption and find ways to reduce it.
You're not tracking per project, but you're tracking it overall.
Overall, we're tracking it overall, yeah.
What's been the response for EPD requests for steel and concrete locally?
Not good.
Really?
We just started, yeah. In all honesty, the very first projects that we Gretna East High School, I wasn't there at the start of the project, so you're not gonna get them then. That was kind of a test project to, how do we make all this work, right? We are now starting 2 projects, which we're applying the full contractor's commitment to. And so, but I've gotten really nowhere with EPDs at this point, so.
So we'll keep questions going, but I want to make sure the people online, is there anybody on the chat?
Yeah, there's one question about the waste diversion log that you showed. Was that kind of from a software, or did you make that reporting template up?
That's an Excel spreadsheet. I have a young kid that works for me. He does amazing things with spreadsheets. I just give him an idea and he goes, but that spreadsheet goes to our project team out in the field. There's other tabs behind. Each tab has a waste stream. They track, we want the weight of the haul, and we want the price of the haul, because we want the price really, because we're analyzing, does it cost us more to do waste diversion? And I want to be able to tell the story that it doesn't. And I think what the data I'm seeing today, it doesn't really cost us more to do waste diversion.
So it's Excel.
Yeah, it's just an Excel spreadsheet.
Do you have any horror stories on knocking over the wrong building or?
We double check addresses. It's like a reoccurring nightmare I have, but.
All right, well, we can continue with the questions, but I want to make sure that we have a good cutoff for our recording. So again, Rich, Ben, thank you so much for presenting today and for enlightening us all on what it's like from your point of view. So I guess that is as good a place as any to end. So thank you very much. Video's over. We can all say swear words now. Is it actually?